Today on Ham Nation, Bob fires up an Ameco. Gordo and George talk test equipment. Solar updates with Don and Dr. T. Stay tuned. Ham Nation is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by ICOM. For more information, visit icomamerica.com/hamnation. And by DX Engineering. DX Engineering offers practically everything you need to outfit your shack, plus the fastest shipping in the industry. Most in-stock items ship the same day, Monday through Friday until 10 p.m. Eastern. For more information, visit dxengineering.com/hamnation.
This is Ham Nation episode 393, March 13th, 2019, all about test equipment.
Hello, everybody, from Fairview Heights, Illinois. It's Bob Heil. I'm K9EID, and we're here to bring you Ham Nation. It's a show all about ham radio and fun, but most of all, about ham radio and what we all do to help a lot of people in emergencies, as well as have some fun when we have some off time. I'm really checking out a headset tonight. We did a production run today of the BM17. Wow, what a wonderful little product that was. Let's see who is all here. We have a whole variety of goodies. George, you're here and you're green. Look at you. How you doing? Wow.
I'm doing okay, Bob. Today's just happens to be my birthday, and I got this pot full of gold here, so, you know, it's a good day.
All right. Well, I know you have some things later for us. We'll be back and get your old smoke and solder cooking, and we'll go from there. And then we have the wonder of down under there, a good old Don Wilbanks. How you doing, Don? You okay?
No, I wondered where you were going with that. No, I have a horrible cold. Thank you for asking. I'm amazed I have a voice. But I had fun at the Rain Ham Fest. Picked up something actually there that I had been wanting for a long time at a seriously good, too good to pass up price. Got one of these guys right here. So expect to hear me more on DMR and D-Star from the house here. So, yeah, fun little bit of kit for a seriously good price. Hello to our WTWW listeners on 5085 and 15810. If you've got some ham radio related stuff you want to let them know about, they'll pass it on. Email at WTWW.us. Great ham radio programming, great oldies, just great programming in general. They're on the big blowtorch coming out of Lebanon, Ohio. We've got Tamitha Scove with the solar update, Newsline, and news from the Last Man Standing set with photographic evidence of such coming up in minutes on most of this same broadcast. Bob?
Okie dokie. Well, this broadcast, by the way, is show number 393. We just have a few more to go to the magic number of 400, and all kinds of things are going to happen there. But here's a guy that can make it happen anytime. Hello, Gordon West. How you doing?
Hey, hi, Bob. I can't wait to hear more and see more of that new ham set. You know what I mean. I'm reading Hamfest for this week, this Saturday, Sierra Foothills Amateur Radio Club here in Southern California. Actually, in Northern California, we'll be getting together at the historic Loomis Train Depot Plaza. And then weekend after next, Saturday the 23rd, down here in Southern California, the Desert Rats Amateur Radio Transmitting Society, they're having their great ham fest. And remember, the American Radio Relay League, ARISS, AMSET, they're all coming together to talk about their upcoming it's actually not a contest, it's an auction, April 8th through the 14th, and you can bid on a brand new 890S donated by Kenwood to help support ARISS up there at the International Space Station, and the league is in there with a big full set of their handbooks. So the auction is coming up in a few more weeks. And Detome said, OH7 Tango, that for our strips that we talked about, where when you peel back the sticky, it's not real sticky on the LED strips. He says a little hot glue and you'll be set, and it can be removed later on. And Don N7 FLT says instead of using the pulse width modulator to dim those LED strips, use a 10K pot, and that pot will draw almost no current and will dim those little babies down to where they go out. So thanks for those responses to what we're doing here. And tonight we've got an exciting program for you. So Bob, back to you.
Okay, we're going to come back to you in a while because you got some other really great things. I kind of started a project here a couple weeks ago. We talked about it a little bit, but I've got some other updates. And this is on a transmitter that really happened back in 1953 or 4 or 5. Many of us that started in this hobby, this was the first transmitter. And it was really kind of an icon for ham radio. But there's a gentleman that has put this together again. He acquired the name Ameco. They've been gone for a long time. And they built some really cool kits. And he has this wonderful, wonderful website with all kinds of things. And as you can see on the screen, they are very helpful. And the kits are marvelous, just marvelous. I was amazed at how easy it went back together. First of all, the instructions were wonderful, and all you needed to do is follow them. Here's their parts list. This is kind of neat. This is the parts list as you receive it, and you'll notice down the one side, they have marked off every one of those parts, so you know they were there. And then here are the instructions. And if you just go along, and you'll see where I penciled off the places, every one of them. That way you won't forget anything. Got to do that. But here's some of the things that happen. When you receive it, this is what it looks like. Very well packed. And what I like so much about it is that they took each part. Now, this is great. Check this out, everybody. They took every part, put it in a little plastic bag, and marked it. R1, C2, and that way you didn't have to just read the value, which is something you would know anyway, but this way you knew that R3 was in that bag. Each part was separate. The knobs, everything had a separate bag. I thought that was really cool because then there's no way you can go wrong, especially with their layout. And just as we did with the Pine board, they follow here with the layout. You really don't need a schematic, but it's best to follow the instructions and do a mark on each one of them to make sure that you got it right, and follow along, and away you go. So, it was a couple of nights. I spent a few hours and put it together. And the first thing they tell you to do is the first thing anyone would do with a kit. You want to check out the power supply. And before they finished it, as you'll notice up in the corner is a transformer and the rectifier. And so what I did is I took out my trusty old Simpson meter and we checked the voltage, and we're good. We're good to go. So follow along and follow the instructions, and you shouldn't be in any trouble. So got that all together. Next comes, what do you do with it? Well, it comes along that first of all, here's the completed underneath. Isn't it pretty? They did a beautiful paint job. Not just pretty, but it is very rugged. I don't know if they powder coated it. It's textured and very thick, and it's going to be around forever. And so after you get all of this together, I think I counted, 9 parts, maybe 10. So you see, it's not complicated. And you can do this in just a matter of a few nights and so on. Here's one of the, this is an extra set of knobs, and you'll see how they mark each little bag. They even sent you some rosin. Check this out, George. How many kits do we ever see that sends you rosin? What do you need that for? You need that to keep your soldering iron tip all clean and keep the pieces clean. And one of the things that I found that was very useful and helpful, and you really need to do this with every part you ever deal with as far as your soldering and stuff. Take a knife blade, or what they did was really cool. They sent a little strip of sandpaper and shine each one of those leads, because then the solder will adhere to them much easier. And all of that's in that kit. So I really applaud these guys for making that happen. So here she is in its glory. And I'm so happy with it. It just worked out so well. And of course, on the back, we've got a place for the key and the antenna. One thing that I had trouble with was the decals. So when you put the decals on, you want to make sure to go down to Lowe's or Hobby Lobby or somewhere and get some clear, there you can see it shining, and get you some clear spray and spray very lightly over the decals so they don't come back off. And you have your choice. You have your choice. You can have red chicken head knobs, or you can have black chicken head. They send either one. So, of course, I put red ones on, and somebody's going to say in the chat room, I know you're going to say, how come you didn't put purple? Because it doesn't match. We have to match, you see. But yesterday, Jerry and I, my production manager, I said, let's go. He's not a ham. He's just very enthusiastic about electronics and builds a lot of the products here. So let's plug this thing in. So we've got a 7300 over there and got a 7610 all hooked up. Put the dummy load in, and I hit the old on switch. Tubes lit up, and all of a sudden on the 7610, bingo. It was right on frequency. Of course, it's crystal controlled. However, this is kind of what I call a relaxation oscillator. It's an oscillator and a final, all in one tube. And so what you have to do is when you tune it, you're not just tuning it for maximum output, but you also can find a place where it'll be very stable. And as you key it, it will stay on frequency. And that's part of the design of this thing. It's very, very simple, because it only uses one tube. As you see here, one tube. You're going to say, oh, Heil's, it's got two. Well, the other one is a rectifier. Come out of the transformer with AC, go through the rectifier, and you end up with about 300-400 volts of DC. And that goes into the oscillator final. So it's doing everything. And you'll notice it has a plug-in coil up there at the top. I wound a coil for 40 meters because I have a 40-meter crystal that came with it. But I'm going to wind a 75-meter coil and put a 75-meter crystal. And I'm going to drill a hole in the back. Why would I want to do that? Because I'm going to satisfy, and I mean this seriously, about 100 of you over the last year and a half, going to show you how a Greenlee punch works, and show you how you can punch a very nice hole for an octal socket in the back of that steel chassis. And we're going to get that all going. Why am I going to do that? Because I'm going to put the B+ out of the rectifier onto one of those pins, and I'm going to put the plate lead of the final on the other one, put a little jumper in it, because I'm going to take one of my Ameco modulators, and this little baby is going to go on 75 meters AM. I know I'm nuts, but we're ham radio operators. We're experimenters, and it'll work beautifully. I already know that because that's how AM transmitters work. I have several of them that I use a lot, and that's how it happens. It's real simple. So I just thought we'd have some fun with it, and I'll show you some of what's going on. I'll be back to talk about this in the next couple of weeks because there's a lot of guys picking up on this. I had a lot of you write me. Some sent pictures of their original Ameco transmitter back in the 50s. That was kind of cool. So we'll continue to get letters and all that about it. Now, check out the video. Here we go. I don't know what we're going to get. Let's find out. First time. You got to be kidding me. I'm going to... Wow, it's pretty stable. My goodness. That's pretty cool. It's no warm-up either. There we go. And I'm using... this is my answer to the CW key. Only for testing. There we go. The wonderful new Ameco. So there you are. Isn't that cool? All right. Well, as you can tell, I'm having fun. I have fun with all this kind of crazy stuff. But the main thing is to excite you, get you guys and gals to doing it. So you have the website. Drop them a line. Have them send you some stuff. But better than that, have them send you one of the kits and tag along with this. And it won't be long and you'll have her all built. Because it's real simple to do. But, man, it's fun. It's really fun. And I compliment the guys that put this together because Kaz did a great job in all of it. I know there were several people involved in it, but how cool. So we're off and running on another kit, and we'll come back next week, give you some more reports. Send me what's happening in your world because I know that some of you are working on other projects, and that's something that Randy is covering. So if you have a project, you want to send pictures of it and let Randy know, K7AGE, because he's got a really great new segment here on Ham Nation every few weeks about some of your projects. And we want to know what you are doing. It's so vital to this hobby that we have projects. And I know we all do. Here's a guy that's got more projects than all of us put together. Big ones, little ones, but they're all fun, I know. And it's his birthday, so he's smiling. Hi, George. How you doing? Happy birthday, buddy.
Well, thank you, Bob. And might I say that's an excellent-looking project there. They really knocked that one out of the ballpark. Looks so authentic. And when you said you were going to cut a hole in the back, I headed down that same rabbit hole. I was thinking, I wonder if we could modulate this thing. So,
of course we are.
Yeah. So there you go, man. That looks like a whole lot of fun. And boy, I think they call that hammered metal, maybe that paint finish.
Yeah.
Look, but boy, that just looks like the real thing, and I guess really it is.
It's really better than the real thing. The parts are better now. Really.
Oh yeah, I imagine so. Yeah. Cool. So we'll be back in just a moment, but first let's get a message from ICOM. Create your own band opening with the IC9700. ICOM's newest SDR transceiver, the IC9700, is coming soon. This new radio is bringing direct sampling to the UHF-VHF weak signal world. The IC9700 all-mode transceiver is loaded with innovative features, such as dedicated amateur satellite operation, color touchscreen, built-in D-Star capability, RF direct sampling on 2 meters and 70 centimeter bands, dual independent receivers capable of full duplex operation as well as dual watch, 100 watts maximum output power on 2 meters, 75 watts max on 70 centimeters, and 10 watts max on 1.2 gigahertz. Visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on all the great ICOM radios. Attention all hams. ICOM knows that ham clubs play a big role in bringing ham communities together to learn from their peers and industry leaders. As a way to give back and help you on your mission, ICOM has launched a promotion exclusively for U.S. ham clubs and the Hamfest they're involved with. By registering your club, you could win ICOM swag, a Skype presentation for your club, or your Hamfest and ICOM booth setup. Register today for your chance to win at icomamerica.com/hams. And you can tune in and enter to win after each episode of Ham Nation. Go to icomamerica.com/hamnation and sign up. You could win great swag prizes like T-shirts and hats, and you'll also be entered in the monthly grand prize drawing for a new radio. For March, that is the ICOM ID51A Plus 2 VHF UHF D-Star Portable. It's got built-in GPS. Of course, it does both D-Star and FM, and it's got D-Star and FM repeater search function, extended D-Star coverage with fast DV data mode, terminal mode, access point mode, and there's a free Android app that you can download and use with the radio. And a lot more. So go to icomamerica.com/hamnation after this and each episode of Ham Nation and register to win. Sign up. Good luck. And don't forget to follow ICOM America Inc. on Facebook and Twitter. And I'll be back in just a few minutes because we've been talking about test equipment for the last few weeks. I'm going to show, those who maybe never used a meter before, how to get started using a meter and hopefully avoid a few mistakes. But first, we've got Gordo with the short shots.
All right. Thanks, George. And we've got some test equipment here that we're going to be talking about. And, you know, with all of the emphasis on inspections of aircraft after the tragic events a few days ago, let's take a look and see what the United States Coast Guard has to offer for those vessels that sail the open waters or even local bays that are fed by the ocean. So, Victor, if we can go ahead and we're going to race through some short shots. This is called a duck boat, and not the duck boat that sank almost a year ago, but the duck boat in Branson, Missouri, unfortunately had no VHF radio contact with shore to warn them that they had an impending storm coming up, and out of the 31 aboard, 17 perished. It was very unfortunate. So the United States Coast Guard for years have had very strict regulations on the inspection of those vessels that carry passengers for hire. If the vessel is less than 100 gross tons out in the ocean or even in a major ocean area such as a bay or harbor, 7 or more passengers for hire, that vessel has to have radio equipment on board. Well, the Coast Guard is not necessarily expert on the ins and outs of radios and NavTechs and emergency position indicating radio beacons. So they allow those with a GROL license, the General Radio Operator license, to do inspections. Now, if you're going to be doing inspections, yes, you can actually make money on them, but you got to be dressed correctly, and those boat owners will know that you're for real when they see those deck shoes. But even some of these small boats, even smaller than that, even rigid inflatables that carry 7 or more passengers for hire outside the breakwater, they too require a vessel inspection. And that's where you, as a ham radio operator, can really get involved and make some serious cash. 3 or 4 hours inspecting at $80 an hour, maybe $90 an hour. We've got a small passenger vessel inspection list, and that is published on the internet by the United States Coast Guard. Simply look up small passenger vessel inspections, and you'll see the FCC's list. Well, what those passenger vessels need at the conclusion of their radio telephony inspection is this certificate. And that way, the U.S. Coast Guard, every 5 years inspecting those passenger vessels that you have maybe checked out, are certain that the radio is up to par. Even small vessels like this require the inspection, and the U.S. Coast Guard can board them at any time and ask to see those credentials that are hanging on the wall. The U.S. Coast Guard has really beefed up its Rescue 21 radio system. And look it up on the internet, Rescue 21. And you'll see that they've now got along their shorelines radio systems that will pick up these inexpensive marine VHF radios. These are like your 2-meter radio for ham, but they're on VHF channels, 55 of them all. They're cheap. These radios anywhere from $89 on up, and they have digital selective calling for emergencies. EPIRBs, if that vessel is going more than 3 miles offshore, and now there's automatic identification system EPIRBs that could even be built into a small wristwatch that you see down there as well for someone going overboard. The U.S. Coast Guard has spent millions with Rockwell and others designing their shore stations. Their shore stations are monitored 24 hours a day, and the shore stations will monitor both VHF as well as their long-range stations on high frequency as well as medium frequencies. And it's important to note, and we'll talk about it next week, that the 2182 is no longer around for calling the Coast Guard, but rather 4125 upper sideband. All of the Coast Guard air units are also equipped with both marine VHF as well as direction finding capabilities on 121.5. Coast Guard cutters, same thing. They have automatic direction finders, so anyone out there on the water that hollers for help is going to get an answer. Now, look at all of these Sea Area A1 coverage areas by the United States Coast Guard. They extend out a minimum of 20 miles and many times up to 100 miles offshore. So any vessel carrying passengers more than 7 or more for hire have to have required VHF radio telephones on board. They're more than 3 miles offshore. They have to carry the EPIRBs, and they must have that every 5-year radio telephone inspection. And the Coast Guard works closely with vessel traffic system so that we can always make sure who's coming and going along our coastal waterways. Now, it used to be to check out the radio telephones, you had to have all sorts of permits, but now it's down to the General Radio Telephone Operator License, GROL. This is not a ham license. This is a commercial license. Requires 2 elements: the Marine Radio Operator Permit, pushover element, 35 questions, actually less than that on the MP exam. And the general radio telephone, that's the biggie. That's 100 multiple choice questions. Now you go, oh my gosh, 100 questions. Where are they? Well, you can find them on the internet, or you can get my book and see them all there with the explanation. But here's the news. The commercial exam is based very closely on the extra class exam. In fact, on the right-hand side is the commercial exam question, 3-17 Bravo 5. On the left-hand side is my extra book with the same exact question. So for those of you that have the extra class license and you live next to the seashore, or you plan to be moving and going to be around where there's boating activity, you don't need much test equipment to, once you've passed the test, to get inspecting these small passenger vessels. And much of the test gear that George is going to talk about and that you have seen here can be easily used, because the marine VHF band, instead of being 146 for 2 meters, it's 156. So most of the slugs for your bird watt meter are going to work fine, because one of the requirements is to put a watt meter on the small passenger vessel, make sure it's putting out more than 20 watts of power. Sometimes we use smaller meters because, yeah, you got to wiggle in there and get behind the panel here to undo the coax from the main radio and hook it up to the bridge. You get the idea. So you got to be in pretty good shape to do the small passenger vessel inspections, where you're going to be taking a small little field strength meter and measuring to see which antenna is doing the transmitting. You're going to need a dummy load for the 10-minute transmitter test, and the MFJ device that is measuring modulation. The deviation meter that they sell is easily modified to go up to 156 from where it normally tunes from 144 to 148. Very easy to adjust it. And you're going to need a good, simple watt meter that's going to be telling you how many watts are coming out, and you need what we just saw, and that is the frequency meter to be able to know that you're within the 10 parts per million for frequency tolerance. Then, armed with a small passenger vessel inspection checklist, again, which you can get off the internet, the one from the Coast Guard is called How to Conduct an Inspection of a Small Passenger Vessel. Just Google Small Passenger Vessel Inspection, and you'll see all the forms come up. And it's most important because in an emergency, one would depress the digital button, and in a fire and you haven't got time to press that microphone and holler Mayday, your digital ID code called a Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number goes out on the airwaves, and it causes everybody's radio in the vicinity within 10 to 12 miles to go to the emergency channel, channel 16. And for those of you that have handhelds that tune up to the 150 meg band, channel 16 is 156.8. 156.8, common FM, not narrowband FM, but the normal FM that we use on the 2-meter band. And to send that digital call, the vessel must obtain a ship station license that contains the Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number. And that's one of the inspection processes that we check, and that is to make sure that the number is in there. And if it's not, you can get extra bucks by taking the radio home, as we've done here, or aboard the vessel with the instruction manual, programming that ship's MMSI number. That's good for another 45 minutes because sometimes it takes a couple times to read over the manual and get it in there. And one more item, and that is that VHF radio aboard small passenger vessels, actually all VHF radios, need to have the latitude and longitude showing that's fed by either another GPS navigation device on board or, as the new radios have, a built-in GPS. So one of your jobs as an inspector, and again, you're not a ham inspector, you're a commercial radio inspector with that GROL license. You're making money at $80 an hour to check this out, because that MMSI number is the identity of the vessel that's maybe calling Mayday, and you can help out. Even handhelds are allowed both aboard a vessel, and new rules, handheld VHF marine radios are now allowed on shore to transmit to an associated ship station. But let me tell you, those handhelds, especially the ones with built-in GPS, with built-in digital selective calling, and that are submersible down to a fathom and float, ask these folks right here, did it save their life? And as you'll see, yes, it did indeed. They were rescued by the Coast Guard when they hollered that they had a Mayday call, but they got their attention originally by pressing the distress button. Now, be cautious, because there are some handhelds out there that are dual band. They cover family radio service. They cover universal radio service. They cover marine radio. They tune into aviation radio. The FCC is soon to disallow those for sale, because look at this. Both those radios are on Marine Channel 6. No. The one on the left indeed is, but the one on the right is on family radio service. So you can see the consternation by someone getting calls aboard a boat from people on land. Every year we do a live demo with the U.S. Coast Guard. I'm a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and that's different than the for-hire vessel inspections that as a commercial GROL operator you would conduct. But the Coast Guard Auxiliary plays a very important part in education. And when we go out to these lighthouse days with the old station wagon and the old radio operator you see on the left, we got these young kids. And what do we teach them? We teach them about how to call for help in an emergency and the importance of VHF channel 16 as the channel for Rescue 21, monitored by all the different Coast Guard units up and down the coastline. And there's Pastor Jason, W6AUX, Coast Guard Auxiliary man, also in charge of communications for our area. He and I do a lot of HF, which we'll be talking about next week. Things that we look for when we're doing our inspections are obviously a microphone that's been out in the sun way too long and the cord is no longer operable. For those vessels cruising more than 20 miles offshore, we're looking for a single sideband medium frequency radio, not one of these old AM double sideband radios that would not qualify. We're also looking to make sure that those operators, the commercial fishing boats or excursion boats, that they don't have a radio that's transmitting on any frequency to stay private. We caution them that you can only use marine VHF on the marine VHF bands. You can't bring in one of these import radios and just dream up a frequency to stay off the main band. And quite obviously, we're looking for any radio that has signs that it's been underwater. This one was not working up to spec. They thought it was, but it didn't put out a microwatt when we tested it with a watt meter. And we're also looking for when some of the commercial captains like to use one antenna with two radios. This is disaster. Whichever radio transmit, it's going to take out that other radio's receiver almost instantly. 25 watts right into the other radio. Yeah, some will go to the antenna, but never, ever, ever for either ham 2-meter 440 or marine VHF, use a T connector. That's death for the other radio. And look at this. For AM, FM reception, somebody came out with a improvised device to be able to use that masthead antenna for picking up the AM, FM ball games. No, that's not going to work out as well. If you're interested in seeing a good VHF digital selective calling tutor on a radio simulator, go to, let me get this right. Go to, let's see, hang on. Go to the VHF radio simulator, and that is at the Boat US website. Boat US. They are a major factor in working with the FCC, with the RTCM, U.S. Coast Guard. They are huge throughout the country and when it comes to education. So for those of you with the extra class license, or those of you studying for the extra class license, and you live next to a coastline where you saw all of the Coast Guard coverage areas, including now the Mississippi River, you may want to think about getting your GROL, commercial radio operator's license. And you can pick up that great book at almost any ham store or Amazon. So we hope all of you will expand your activities in ham radio and put on another cap, and that is your commercial radio cap, and provide these radio inspections. So if there's a disaster at sea, they're going to be able to call out with a radio that you've checked out and certified for 5 years to the U.S. Coast Guard. So that's my story at this end. Next week, we'll talk about high frequency. Happy St. Paddy's Day, everybody. And Don, happy St. Paddy's Day to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. As you can see, I've been to McNally's Irish Pub, where they're guaranteed to be a fight every night. Love the place. Love the place. I have fond memories of the Coast Guard Auxiliary from 30 years ago when I had a boat, went through the Coast Guard Auxiliary Safe Boating course. Everybody who gets out on the water needs to take that course. I had the Marine VHF handheld. Later on, I upgraded to the regular 25 watt with a little Shakespeare loaded whip on the stainless steel rail of my little 18-foot runabout. And you know what? We had a problem. And we had a bad problem, and I had to get on there and yell Mayday, and I had to be towed in by a crew boat. So those radios are important. And living down here in the coastal area, I think that's something that I'm going to check into, that GROL license, because, man, that's good stuff. I like it. Hey, why don't we check in now with the news of the week from Amateur Radio Newsline, and we'll see solar update from Dr. T as well.
From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2158, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, March 13th, 2019. If you like to be busy chasing satellite contacts, now you can chase a little bit of satellite glory along with it as part of AMSAT's 50th Anniversary Awards program.
A number of special awards are being made available this year to commemorate the formation of the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation on March 3rd, 1969. They are the 50th Anniversary AMSAT Oscar Satellite Communications Achievement Award, the 50th Anniversary AMSAT Satellite Friends of 50 Award, the AMSAT on HF 50th Anniversary Award, and a limited edition of the 50th Anniversary AMSAT Oscar Satellite Communications Achievement Award. There will only be 20 original certificates available for this last one. This award will be issued to the first 20 amateurs to complete 20 confirmed qualifying contacts on any satellite. The certificate itself is unique. It's on goldenrod paper stock and signed by AMSAT's founding president, Perry Klein, K3JTE, who now uses the call sign W3PK. Contacts must be made this year between the 3rd of March and the 31st of December. The first 20 applicants who successfully submit 20 confirmed qualifying contacts on any satellite will receive this award. Two-way contacts can be made with stations in the U.S., Canada, or any DXCC entity. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Skeeter Nash, N5ASH.
Another anniversary is being celebrated. The Mid-State Amateur Radio Club in Johnson County, Indiana is gearing up to celebrate its 35th year as an ARRL chartered club.
35 years ago in 1984, a handful of central Indiana hams gathered at a Franklin, Indiana firehouse, chose a president and other officers, and then settled on the Mid-State name since there were hams in attendance from several other counties. Over the years, the club has grown and become more invested in their community by providing communications for dozens of public service events around Johnson County. Like radio waves, they didn't stop at the county line when it came to public service. Many MARC members have helped with major world sporting events like the 1987 Pan American Games and the 2001 Police and Fire Games held in Indianapolis. More recently, some of the club members provided frequency coordination during Super Bowl 46, and they are still always on hand to help with the annual Indianapolis 500 Festival Mini Marathon. The Mid-State ARC will celebrate 35 years with breakfast at their monthly meeting March 16th, beginning at 8 a.m. Immediately following their VE testing session, the club will fire up their one-day special event station using the club call sign of WA9RDF. Look for them on 20 and 40 meter single sideband beginning around 1600 hours UTC. QSL info will be available on the WA9RDF QRZ page and on the midstatehams.org website. Reporting for Amateur Radio Newsline, this is Jack Parker, W8ISH.
If you're thinking about going on 2 meters, forget the repeater. Here's an operating event that celebrates simplex.
Making contacts during this upcoming event is as simple as turning on your 2-meter rig. Last year's popular Light Up 2 Meters Night is back, just in time for spring. Between 6 and 8 p.m. local time, wherever local is for you, get on 2 meters simplex and enjoy the company of other amateurs doing the same thing. The organizer, Joseph Durnall, NE3R, told Newsline in an email that hams might want to start by calling on 146.52 megahertz, but they don't have to limit themselves to that frequency, or for that matter, even to their QTH. Last year's participants made use of their mobile rigs and handhelds wherever they happened to be. Joseph said the events might also help focus attention on the fact that some handhelds could need an improved antenna, or perhaps there's a 2-meter vertical on the tower that needs replacing. The goal is simple, he said. Make as many contacts as you can and have as much fun as you can. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jerry Goodrich, KF5KRN.
A reminder that the nominating period is now open for the Newsline WA6ITF Young Ham of the Year Award. Full details and the nominating form can be found on our website, arnewsline.org, under the YHOTY tab. We'll present the award in August at the Huntsville Hamfest in Alabama. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Skeeter Nash, N5ASH, Jack Parker, W8ISH, Jerry Goodrich, KF5KRN, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now here's the solar update from Dr. Tamitha Scove, WX6SWW.
We're calming down from some mini solar storms that have hit us over the last couple days, and we have a coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone. What does this mean for you? Those stories and more in the news this week. Space weather this week has gotten very exciting. We have 2 bright regions on the Earth-facing disk this week. One of them is Rogue Region 2734, and we call it a rogue region because it's showing some influence from solar cycle 25. And as such, it's been very active. You can see after this lunar eclipse right here, blammo, right there. Did you see that? It fired off an Earth-directed solar storm, and then a day later, whammo, again, another Earth-directed solar storm. Now, granted, these were mini storms and they were pretty weak, but they did hit Earth over the last couple days, and they brought aurora clear down to Michigan in the United States and as far north as New Zealand. Now, what's really cool is that we have another chance for a solar storm with this coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next day or so. So you aurora photographers, wow, keep your batteries charged, especially at high latitudes. You guys could be in yet for another show. Now, on top of that, we have a bright region that is rotating into Earth view right now, and well, it's not all that organized, so it probably won't keep the solar flux up high enough to stay in the 70s, but it will keep us at the high end of poor for radio propagation, which, you know, isn't too bad for solar minimum, but hey, at least it's something. Switching to your solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating that fast solar wind from that coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone. At high latitudes, NOAA's expecting active conditions with up to about a 30% chance of a major storm. At mid-latitudes, well, we're only expecting unsettled conditions, but we have about a 10% chance of a minor storm. Now, because we've already had a little bit of rattling from these earlier solar storms, the conditions here could last over a couple days, maybe even into the weekend, especially at high latitudes. But overall, this shouldn't be a very strong storm, and things shouldn't last, especially at mid-latitudes, things shouldn't last for very long. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, everything is still in the green when it comes to big solar flares, so this should make you GPS users on Earth's day side very happy. We have a spotless sun right now, so we have no risk for radio blackouts. However, we do have a couple bright regions on the Earth-facing disk, and that is boosting the solar flux just a little bit. We're going to hang on to the low 70s here for a couple more days before we begin to tank into the high 60s. That means radio propagation on Earth's day side will likely be poor as we move in through the weekend. And we're just going to have to hang on until some new regions come into Earth view. Now, also because we are at solar minimum, we have a higher cosmic ray impingement than we normally would have. So you frequent flyers, and this includes you air crew who fly over 800 hours annually and fly at high altitudes and high latitudes, you are in the marginal range for radiation dose, and this does include you prenatal passengers, so please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week has gotten very exciting. First, we had a couple bright regions, including Rogue Region 2734, that has shown some influence from the new solar cycle, and it's been active enough to even fire a few mini solar storms at us that brought aurora down to mid-latitudes. And then on top of that, we have some fast wind that's going to be hitting Earth here in the next couple days, and that could bring yet more aurora. So you aurora photographers, make sure you keep your batteries charged. Now, on top of that, we have a bright region that is rotating into Earth view, and it's going to give the solar flux just a little bit of a boost. So amateur radio operators and you emergency responders, well, you guys are going to be hovering at the low end of marginal, maybe even the high end of poor here for the next, I don't know, maybe even 2 weeks until another bright region rotates into Earth view. So you're just going to have to deal with it. But maybe these low-level solar storms will help boost that radio propagation on Earth's night side. But at least for you GPS users, well, both the day side and the night side, they're looking pretty good for you. So as long as you stay away from Aurora and away from those dawn dust terminators during the solar storm, your GPS reception should be pretty nice. I'm Tamitha Skov. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Dr. T. Always good information from her. And if you're not following her on Twitter, you really should be. At Tamitha Skov. At Tamitha Skov. She's a good follow. I got some news from the Last Man Standing television show. Of course, amateur radio figures pretty prominently in that show. You may remember a few weeks ago when they were operating from the set, and of course all the radios are live on the set, that the actor who plays Boyd, the little guy, Jet Juergensmeyer, got on the radio and had a lot of fun. Well, that is Jet and his dad, Scott. And they are holding CSCEs. That's right. They are now, or will be very soon as they get their call signs, Technician Class Amateur Radio Operators. The VEs were Rob AA6RA, Norm K6YXH, and Naomi WB6OHW. So thanks to those guys for sitting the test for them. There you go. Jed Juergensmeyer and his dad, Scott, two brand new hams, and you can see them on Last Man Standing. You see Jet, anyway, on Last Man Standing. And it'd be nice if maybe they wrote an amateur radio story in for him. That'd be kind of cool. Well, I want to talk to you now about a little bit of test equipment because, well, George is going to talk about test equipment. But I want to talk to you about antenna analyzers. There's no better way to take the guesswork out of testing, tuning, or repairing your antennas and feed lines than with a quality antenna analyzer. It's a must-have, and DX Engineering carries analyzers from Rig Expert. They are the world leader, particularly their family of Zoom analyzers. The AA35 Zoom covers you from 60 kilohertz through 35 megahertz. The AA55 Zoom is 60 kilohertz through 55 megahertz. And the AA230 Zoom covers from 100 kilohertz all the way up to 230 megahertz. And here are some of the ways to take full advantage of these amazing tools for your station. The Zoom analyzers are ideal for checking coax cable assemblies and measuring antenna stats like SWR, impedance, return loss, and the capacitance or inductance of the reactive load. You can use them for tuning an antenna to resonance, SWR, and impedance comparison. Before and after a specific event, such as rain or winter weather, fault location, and more, they feature simple interfaces and self-explanatory menus with ham-friendly keyboard markings. They have a unique zoom-in function that allows you to view graphic points close up on the 3.2-inch color display. They provide measurements for 25, 50, 75, and 100 ohm systems. Other features include waterproof keypads, multilingual menus, and USB link to a PC. Now, the 55 Zoom and 230 Zoom models are available with a Bluetooth option, and that integrated Bluetooth wireless technology lets you work in conjunction with a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, and you can operate the analyzer remotely, see the characteristics of your antenna in more detail, and share the measurement results on social networks. Pretty slick bit of kit right there. And DX Engineering offers combo packages that let you purchase both a Rig Expert analyzer and a sturdy case to keep it safe, because it's a big investment, something you're going to use forever, and you want to keep it safe. And there's no better case than the custom-designed Nanook equipment cases that are available for all three Zoom models and all other Rig Expert analyzers. Each case is filled with cubed, sectioned foam so you can create the ideal padded space for your analyzer for a perfect fit. And DX Engineering, ships faster than anyone else in the industry. Most orders placed by 10 p.m. Eastern are shipped same day. Proven products, expert advice. DX Engineering is helping you shrink the globe. Request your catalog or shop online 24/7 at dxengineering.com/HamNation. And they're good friends of what we do here at Ham Nation. We thank them for their support of what we do here at Ham Nation. George, talk to us about test equipment. What are we talking about today?
Well, Don, we're talking about meters once again, and, well, let's get right on into it. We've got this one I've showed you before. This is actually a Radioshack meter, but for some reason it's one of my favorite ones, and it's accurate, so, that's good enough for me. If we look on here, we're going to talk about how to make some measurements tonight, because you may know how to use a voltometer to measure voltage and current and resistance, but not everybody does. And, it only takes one mistake to ruin your meter and your day. So We're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you're an expert on this, well, that's great. This segment's probably not for you, but for those just getting started or wanting to know how to use their meter and a little scared of it, well, this should help. Looking at the meter here, there's a number of scales around it. This is not an auto ranging. We select our range that we want to use here. And you notice there's two different colors of test probes here. There's a red and a black. And there's 4 different holes that these could possibly fit in. For most measurements, you're going to want to put the black one in the common, or sometimes it'll be labeled as negative. The red one, in this case, since we're going to measure voltage first, we're going to put it in the hole here that's labeled voltage and ohms. Most cases, you can measure voltage and ohms with the probe in the same position. You move it to these other positions, though, when you're going to measure current. We'll look at that in a minute. So I'm going to measure this 12-volt battery right here. I can just put my meter just right across the terminals on it and measure it. I want to switch it to one of the DC voltage ranges here, and you want to select the range that's closest to the voltage you're trying to measure. Like right now, it's on 200 volts. Let's stick our meter across here. We've got 12.8 volts there. Well, that's good, but, if we scoot on down here to the 20-volt DC range and measure it, you can see we've added one more decimal place there. Now we can see instead of 12.8, it's actually 12.86 volts. So you want to use the highest range that you can, the lowest range that you can that will handle the reading that you're trying to make. On a digital voltmeter, if I go down here and I try to measure on the 2-volt scale, I just get an overload. I'm not really damaging my meter by doing that, but on an analog meter, you very well could be. So that's to measure a DC voltage. Very simple there. Incidentally, let me step it on up here to the 200-volt DC range. I've got a power strip here with 110 volts on it. If I try to measure that AC voltage on a DC meter, I'm not getting much of anything there, just a little flaky reading every now and then. You've got to put that meter down in the AC range here. And to measure the wall outlet there, I'm going to choose the 200-volt range here. Put my probes in there. And notice I'm keeping my fingers away from the business end of those probes there because I don't want to get across that 110 volts. 117 volts right here in the shack tonight. That's typical. I see 118 in here often. But that's how you would measure AC voltage. So to measure voltage, you just take your probes and you just put them right across the voltage source. Select your range first, of course, and whether it's AC or DC. Now, what if you wanted to measure current? Well, you need to be a little more careful there. We'll put it down here, since I'm going to measure this battery, we'll put it down here on the DC amp range. And I don't know, well, to start with, don't put it on current. And of course, we got to change our lead too. So we put our red lead over here on amps, because I'm not going to measure 20 amps. It's going to be less than that, I know, because I'm just going to hook up this light bulb here and see what kind of current it's drawing. Never take your ammeter probes, which we're an ammeter now since we're in the amp position here, and put it across a voltage source, or you're going to blow up a meter. It's not good. Also, don't try to measure the amps, especially don't try to measure the amps on an AC outlet. Let me just tell you, it's more than your meter's going to want. And if you're lucky, all it does is blows the fuse that's inside the meter here, and you can change that. But if you're not lucky, you could smoke your meter. All right, so to measure current, we don't put it in parallel across a voltage source or across a circuit. We've got to put it in series with our battery and our load here. So I'll take one lead, put it on one leg of the light bulb. The other leg of the light bulb is on negative down here. Put my other lead here on the battery. My light lights up. It's showing 0.01. Well, you know, I'm on the 20 amp scale. I need to be on a lower scale here because I'm not in the 20 amp socket. And, you know, this little bulb's not pulling 20 amps. So I'm going to go down to the 200 milliamp scale here. Let's try that measurement. We can see it's measuring 66.1 milliamps, which is about what we'd expect for this light bulb. So to measure current, you put your meter in series with the load. Never put it across the voltage source. Let's move on now and look at resistance. So we're going to want to turn our meter up here to resistance. We're going to need to put our probe back to where we've got it over here in the voltage and ohms socket. And I've got a couple of resistors here. First, this I happen to know is a 300 ohm resistor. So I'm going to select a scale here that will accommodate 200 ohms won't do it. So I'll put it on the 2K ohm range, and I'll just put my meter right across parallel with the resistor there, 299 ohms or 0.299 K ohms. So we can be pretty certain that's 300 ohm resistor right there. Now I've got another resistor here, and I'm going to pull out a set of alligator clip leads here, just so I don't have to hold this with my fingers. And I know this is a 1 meg ohm resistor, so I'll put it up here on the 2 meg ohm scale because that's the lowest scale I've got that will accommodate 1 meg ohm. We're measuring it right there, 1.009 meg ohms. So reasonably sure that's a 1 meg ohm resistor. Now, you notice I put it on these alligator clips here, and I'm not holding it like I did on the little 300 ohm resistor. That's because if I put my fingers in here, my skin resistance is going to change the reading. Now, you know, we're not just measuring the resistance of this resistor, we're also measuring my skin resistance and how much of I affect the circuit. Now, if you just hold one side, you can do that. That won't affect anything. But if you've got your fingers on both sides there, then the resistance in your body is also going to affect the reading that you're getting there. So don't do that. Now, that's using a digital voltometer meter here. Let's move over and look at an analog meter here. This is the trusty old standard here, Simpson 260. And the only thing I'm going to show you here is measuring resistance, because everything else I said earlier pretty much applies. You select a range that will, the lowest you can get that will accommodate what you want to read, because you want your reading to be in the upper end of the scale here. If it's reading down here, you're not going to get very good accuracy. So we're going to select, first thing we got to do is turn it on, select plus DC, minus DC, or AC. Well, I'm just going to measure a resistor here, and we'll do that on plus DC. I know this is a 300 ohm resistor. If I didn't, it wouldn't matter. I could just start wherever I wanted to. But I'm going to put it on the R times 100 scale there. Now, that's different. That's not like a 200 ohm scale. That's an R times 100 scale. That means whatever I read on the top scale up here, ohms, I multiply that by 100. The first thing I've got to do, though, is zero my meter here, because the resistance of the probes and the internal components of it and the condition of the battery could vary. So we short our meter leads together there, and you notice it only comes up to 2 there. We've got to turn this all the way up to where our meter sits right there on 0 before we ever start. So now we'll take our resistor, put it on the meter there. It comes up, let's see, that's 0, and the next large mark is 1. There's 2. Comes up right at 3. So 3 times 100, that means this is a 300 ohm resistor. Same thing I said earlier, you know, if I'm trying to measure, say, that 1 meg ohm, That's not going to work very well if I've got fingers on both sides of it there. So that's how we'd measure resistance. Another interesting thing about this particular model of the 260, you notice there's a mirror right there? Well, that's to eliminate parallax errors. The way you read this meter is whatever it comes up to on the scale there, you put your eye right in front of it so that you're seeing the reflection in the mirror there, and they line up exactly to where your meter needle itself and the reflection you're seeing are one. In other words, you can't see the reflection at all. Then you're seeing exactly where you are on the scale there. So be more careful with your analog meter because it's easier to damage it, and you don't want to do that. For some things, I've mentioned it earlier in the previous segments here, I prefer an analog meter. For most things, though, it seems I grab the digital meter today. You're usually going to get better accuracy with one of these. They're actually cheaper in most cases today because it's harder to find the analog meters. But, you know, if you can, have one of each. You can't go wrong that way. Next week, I don't know what we're going to look at yet. We'll find out then. But I do want to mention one thing. Show us your project. Randy is collecting your photos and stories on what it is that you're building or soldering or wrenching or drilling holes in. Send them to k7age@outlook.com, and you could be in Randy's next segment of Show Us Your Project. And before I go, one thing I want to mention, my current project, because I dabble in electronics and computers and, you know, whatever I can tear up, I want you to join us Friday night over at live.amateurlogic.tv. We'll be shooting the next episode there, but what I'm going to show you is something you probably more than likely haven't seen before. You've seen the little Raspberry Pi computers, and we all know they run a version of Linux. And there was a Windows version that you could run on it, Windows IoT Core. Well, due to some people doing a little hacking and, you know, Microsoft doing a little work on an ARM version of Windows, it's now possible. It's not easy and it's not fast, but I'll show you Friday night. I've got Windows 10 Pro, just like desktop, like you run on your regular PC, running on a Raspberry Pi. So join me Friday night, live.amateurlogic.tv. And I'll show you all about it and how we got that going. And now it's time to bring Bob back in because, Bob, you've got some mail, don't you?
Yeah, yes, I do. I really do. First of all, I want to reiterate some of the things you said. I love to see your Simpson meter. I have 3 of those. I'm an old analog guy. Like Joe Walsh says in his latest song, I'm just an analog guy in a digital world. And I love those Simpsons. But that's the way to do it. So thanks for doing that. And Don, you brought up the thing about the simplex thing. I really want everybody to take part of this. I don't work 2 meters. I just don't. I used to be a hog, man, for 17 years. That was it. And I loved it, but it's quite different today, and the repeaters took over, and that was the end of that. However, March the 24th, please join us. I am going to be on the air, 146.52 on simplex, not a darn repeater. It's going to be simplex. And you can do some really cool things with antennas and just getting on having fun one-to-one. Facebook.com/2M, 2 meter FM simplex. Facebook.com, 2M FM simplex. That's where you find some of the stuff about it. And I do hope you're going to join us because we're gonna have some fun there. Yeah, I got several letters. time's running out, but Jerry sent me a really cool one. W8RQM says, I remember that about the AM nets you talked about. I remember the old days back in the 60s when plate modulation, even screen modulation. I don't believe a lot of hams today have ever heard about both of them. Well, most of our people are, if they're not sleeping. I mentioned it tonight. I didn't see much in the chat room. I don't know if you guys are watching that or not, but come on, we're doing some cool things here. Jerry, thanks a lot. I appreciate that, and we'll catch you on AM. That's for sure. Believe it or not, spring is just coming, and in summer, and it's antenna time, and so on, and things get really good on VHF. You're going to find that out, and the simplex is kind of the start of it. Back in the day, this was my VHF station, one of them. That was 1959. It was one of the first 10 single sideband stations and a kilowatt on 2 meters and 6 meters, but worked a lot of AM back in those days. But you see this little Kiger over there in the corner, that little white box? That little white box is a Gonset communicator. I came home one day, and you can't see it here, but the antenna that came with it was a 19-inch whip R on 6 meters. It was a 56-inch whip, and that was a 6-meter one there. Or you could plug it into a regular antenna, a beam or whatever. I came home one day from high school, and I turned the darn thing on, and I kept hearing all kinds of station. And I called this station I heard. It came back to me. It was in Cuba. Cuba. Yeah, we're not talking about Cuba, Missouri. I mean, the Cuba. That's before all went crazy down there and you could work them. And I really enjoyed some of the DX contacts. And see, you never know on simplex what's going to happen. You just never know. Of course, I got carried away. If you guys have never seen this one, that's the antenna that I ended up with. That was an amazing project that I did. In fact, that antenna, NASA used that antenna. There's a whole story about that. Maybe I should talk about that sometime. It was a fascinating thing. These are the kind of things that happen in ham radio. You never know what's going to happen, but it's not going to happen if you just sit around looking at the wall. Get out there and work somebody. Turn those transmitters on. See who you're going to talk to. You don't know. But we want to start talking about dipoles. Here's a really great one. I've had one of these up for years in Belleville. It's 75 and 40 together. And I make my own center insulators. And yeah, there's some really great center. And I just do it because I like to do it. Take a piece of plexiglass and make your own mount for it. And we're going to get into messenger lines. How do you string them from tree to tree and not have them all fall down? You do it with a rope. Not just a rope, but with really good stuff. And it's not going to deteriorate. But these are some of the things we're going to start talking about. And I want to talk to you about this. I want you to write me emails. Get on the chat room and talk to me about this sometime when I'm in there. Let's get into building things and having fun. Now is the time to get ready because it's spring's right around the corner. And I can't wait because that's when you'll start hearing some more openings on 6 meters and things come alive. And speaking of people that are alive, there's one out there that way, out in Colorado. Hi, Amanda. How are you doing? K1DDN. How you doing?
We're doing good. Actually, most of the state is having an extreme blizzard, but we have nothing. We have maybe 25-mile-an-hour winds, but poor Denver and Colorado Springs, they have 10 inches of snow and about 1,100 drivers stranded on their roads. So everybody else in Colorado, stay safe. First, Bob, I have to ask you, do you recognize what this is? Yeah.
Oh, of course. Am I greeny? Yes. Yeah, greeny punch.
Oh, the hole punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Green lights.
Jeff was sitting here watching next to me. He said, "Oh, I'll be right back." And he ran out and grabbed it. He said, "Got to show us."
Yes.
Evidently, I hear that they can come in different patterns or something.
Yeah. Squares and rounds and triangles. Yeah. They're really cool.
Very interesting stuff. And now this part, I kind of feel shameless now. our UHF repeater system just became a club. So Bob was just saying, get on 2 meter simplex, but here I am saying our repeater system is now a club. WE0FUN for the fun machine. Right. Let's see. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Kind of a hassle, though. Let's see. Oh, Bob, this one's for you. So sometimes the band is called 75 meters and sometimes it's called 80 meters. Why the difference and what should we really be using?
Well, what are we talking about? 80 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters? Those are wavelengths of the frequency. And if you get up into the phone band, like 3850, 3820, 38 up there, that's, of course, 75 meters. You got down in the CW band, that's on down the band, 37, that is 80 meters. That's the wavelength of that frequency. Same thing on 40 meters, although 40 meters is pretty much, we don't ever associate it with any other wavelength than 40 meters because it's a pretty short band, actually. And same, I don't know why they don't do it on 160 because that's a biggie, but it's there telling you the wavelength. So there. You always want to, my mother always told me, you want to learn something every day. There it is.
And if I was Dawn, I would say something really snarky right now, but I'm not Dawn, so we're going to go with that. Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that. Let's see. A couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, I kind of bashed polar coordinates in our extra tests. And I didn't think about it at the time, but yes, I got some mail about it. And somebody actually sent me some hand drawings about polar coordinates, explaining them to me and why they're actually necessary. So stay tuned for that because I plan on showing them. It was really neat and really cool of Scott. And I can't remember your call sign, Scott, but I couldn't believe it. He said, this is why you need polar coordinates and this is why you need to know about it. And I said, okay. We've got it now, and it was really neat. And it was just so Bob-like with the hand drawings. You guys all know. Okay, this question I'm going to send to George. It was for Don originally, but what do you think about the mini VNA Tiny Plus antenna spectrum analyzers?
You know, I have not used one of those yet. I've seen them, and they sound interesting. Well, I don't know. I've heard good things about them. I would like to try one. I do have an analyzer that will work with the mini VNA software. Just to be honest, I can't say, but I haven't done it. And that's probably the same thing Don would tell you. So we didn't lose any points there.
Another reason for me to have a snarky comment. Darn it. I wish I was more on my game tonight. Gordo, anything from you? Have you tried? Have you played with them?
On the spectrum analyzer, for those that work on repeaters like your hubby does, and you need to double check and see if you've got a strong spur or maybe a harmonic 2 times the frequency. Usually it's the spurs at repeaters. You never know you have one until you see it with the spectrum analyzer. And then by working with the duplexers or the cavities, you can tune out that spur and many times create just a perfect passband for the signal going out and a perfect passband for signals coming in, and those going out without spurs due to proper tuning.
You're absolutely correct. And Jeff has tried to explain to me how he's tuning his repeaters. And when you tune a repeater, you don't actually tune the repeater, you're tuning the duplexer. So, and this would be a great segment. I should have Jeff record this but it takes a lot of time. It does. And I could just do the fast forward mode. But he sticks it on each can of the duplexer, and you're going for this very needle point for your tuning of your duplexer to make this repeater sound right. And it takes a very, very long time and a super amount of tuning to get it correct. And you can't just take those cans afterwards and throw them into the back of your car, right? You know that, Gordo. You can't do that because you're going to rattle everything around and it's going to be out of tune again. You have to handle it very, very gently after that. It's quite a precise process. So if anyone's ever interested in that, I should have Jeff do a segment. All right, let's go over some nets. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, George.
Thank you.
And I hope you got lots of birthday wishes on Facebook, even though Facebook was broken today. So not to mention, we have Pi Day coming up tomorrow and Einstein's birthday. So you were born next to the genius, George. That's all I'm saying. You're so close.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
So close.
I missed it. I missed it by this much. One day.
What can you say? Hey, close enough. Close enough works sometimes, just not in repeater tuning. Okay, let's move on. We've got some nets to go over tonight. We're going to have the 40 meter net on 7197, and we're going to have the 80 meter net on 3906, or the 75 meter net, depending on who you are. And we have 14 Charlie for the D-Star net and TAC 311 for the DMR net. So make sure you get on there and join in, and they're waiting for you to check in right now. Back to you, Bob. I'm guessing you're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, I just got a note from John Amadeo. Don, he's talking about Jet. You know, Jet is not just a terrific actor, but he's a country music star. Did you know that, Don? Is Don
Don's
here?
not here, but
No,
I'll
but
speak.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
met him.
Yeah,
And
I just got a note.
I met him
John,
on the
thanks,
set and I
John.
didn't know that.
So,
Wow.
yeah, we'll have to go look for Jet Jurgesmeyer's. I'm sure he's got videos somewhere, so that's cool. And I also had somebody email me the Ameco transmitter. It's just thenewAmeco.com. The new all together. That's where you'll find it, and we'll go from there. And last but not least, we're talking about antennas. Yeah, there you go. Right there. You really want to catch this. I'm telling you, I talk about it. I know it's my book. It's really not. It's about 60 years of stuff you don't see very often. And there's 40 pages about antennas, not what to buy, not what doesn't, and all this good stuff. It's how you can build this stuff. And it's been passed down to me for decades and decades. And I know, Gordo, you used the book a lot, but check it out. All the dealers have it, and it'll be really worthwhile, because we're going to really get into some of the building these antennas as soon as the weather breaks a little bit. It's been great fun. And we'll see you back here next week, right here. Tell all your friends, and join the chat room. Talk to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. And we'll see you on the air, that's for sure. This is K9EID from Fairview Heights, Illinois. So long, everybody. See you on 75 or 40 or wherever. Bye-bye for now.